Getting a little more wiring done here. And running out of room. Welcome to Urban Monk TV. So I actually have plenty of room, I just need to get better organized. I've seen guys doing YouTube channel videos in much tighter spaces than I have, so I am not one to complain. I just gotta clean up. But let's move a little bit further along with the wiring here. I've done a few things off camera that I'll catch you up with, and we're getting close. So one of the things I did most recently was get some power leads from the positive on the battery to our starter solenoid, and then wired the lead that runs up to the starter button on the right hand handlebar controls hooked into the wiring harness. But because I've moved, this thing used to live down in here somewhere, and so because I've moved things, of course I'm having to extend wires. Let's show this on the wiring diagram, then I'll come back and show you what I did here. So starter relay, I call it a solenoid, same thing, has of course positive coming off the battery into it. The other terminal goes off to the actual starter motor. And then you've got this yellow and green wire that heads out of that solenoid up into the harness, and eventually it goes off to the switch. Where is the switch? Here we go, USA. Here we go, sorry, yellow, green, up here, starter button. Here's all your stuff on the right hand side. So let's show you what I did. So here's that yellow green coming out of the harness. A lot of this is ending here but needs to reach back to here, and this lead only came about maybe this far. And so what I did was I cut this wire, I soldered on an additional piece of wire, and I didn't have yellow green per se. I bought an assortment of wire of different colors in it's automotive wire. It's 16 gauge, and it's good quality copper stranded wire, but just needed to extend that, so I soldered it. And I'll do one solder extension like this in this video and show you how I do that, but went with the original bullet connector here and just soldered that length back on, because why not? And then where they connect is still the same color. What else? Oh, the other thing I had to do was put in my fuse that the previous owner had eliminated. So let's see how I did that. Okay, so coming from the positive lead on the battery, you'll see there's this little red wire comes off of that. Well, even though these are separated by this great distance on the wiring diagram, in reality, they're just like this. You've got your main positive lead, and then right off of it is this little red wire here. So, that's what the wiring diagram is representing. So that red wire came through a 15 amp fuse and then tied back into the red on the wiring harness. And back to the bike, you may recall that I had located two red wires coming out of the wiring harness, this one and this one, and I used my multimeter to make sure that there was continuity between those two and that I was clearly tied in to that circuit. I am. So what I needed to do was put a 15 amp fuse, which I have done, upgraded to the blade style and taken from that lead, plugged in a bullet connector, and then had to solder this to get, you know, a long enough section. But I don't worry about having multiple sections of wire when I solder them together like this. Those connections are so good and so solid that not a big deal. And then of course I shrink wrap them for insulation, and then another bullet connector and tie it into our harness there. So now I have 15 amp fuse protection. So then the other thing I have done, I showed on the wiring harness how we come out of the starter solenoid and head off to down here into our starter. So there's that. So this guy is completely wired. The only thing remaining is to get the button up here to be connected. Now that button is this yellow and green wire in the harness, and all the way up here it is yellow and green. So on the front end of the bike, I should find that in here. Here it is, and it's just part of this plug, which, do I still have that plug? Yes, I do. So I'm probably just going to utilize this and try to tuck it away neatly, because there's no reason to cut any of these. That's all going to remain the same because this remained the same. What isn't really too pleasing here is I had put some plastic restorer or trim restorer on this piece to make it as nice and black as the left hand side, and it's already gone back to kind of this faded oxidized just sitting here in the garage. So I might take this off and paint it, because this looks, I don't know, sometimes I like things to look really vintage and just leave them, and I don't mind some patina like these little scratches. Or another place I left patina is here on the choke lever. You know, why am I doing this when I've gone through so much trouble to make the gas tank that beautiful and the seat that beautiful? Because I want to show its age in some way. And so I'm leaving a couple of little things. I guess it's just an artistic decision. And the other thing I'll mention here is that what I'm trying to do at this point is, and I've said this before in a previous video, is just make the connections. Once everything's connected, I can see where I've got to extend wires and make changes. So let's keep fiddling around with this. So I see I've got this plug here, and I've got this guy and these. Now, you know, that's clearly the headlight, so that just jumps out at me as easy peasy. My headlight now is these wires, but with the addition of a blue wire for high beam. Well, I've got two high beams now because there's also a high beam indicator on this gauge, and heck, I'm gonna get both of them to work if I can, and I think I can. So, how about this guy? This is orange, gray, red, and brown. Orange, gray, here we go. Orange, gray, brown, red. That's ignition switch. I'm going with the stock ignition switch, and I've just left it in its original position. So, that's easy enough. I'm gonna just plug these in. Again, I want to try to figure out how to make this all neat and tidy under here, because I don't have the original headlight bucket to hide a lot of this wiring in. A lot of this is going to have to be exposed. So I'll do my best to try to tuck it away somehow. But for now, let's just connect things. So now my ignition switch is connected. And as I mentioned, here is the right-hand control. I'm just going to go ahead and put that together, but I was about to say I'll do that loosely, but I think actually I'll do it tight. So, done. We've got ignition switch, right-hand controls. I really, if I put a negative ground now together to the engine, I should be able to run my starter switch. So let's hook up that negative ground to the engine. I mentioned that I bought a whole bunch of different colored 16 gauge wire, automotive wire, don't get speaker wire. And then I also got some 8 gauge twisted copper strand, and you know, get yourself some extra sections of this because of the move that you're going to make if you're doing a cafe racer like this. And we will route this and get it connected. So I've got to put some terminals on here. So I need to bare an end here on one of these cables, and I don't have a wire stripper that'll go to 8 gauge. 10 is as far as it'll go, so I just have to be very careful as I cut my knife here. But what I do not want to do is cut any of the outer strands. You know, I don't want to reduce the boy, this box cutter is not very sharp. I do not want to reduce the overall diameter of the wire here, so I'm being extremely careful about how deep I go with this. There we go. I don't think I lost any. And so with that threaded, I've got, this is exactly an 8 gauge wire terminal, and it's a crimp end. I could solder this also, but I'm going to end up melting all of this insulation, and I think it'll be sufficient to crimp this, so I'm going to do that. Yeah, that's tight. I may put a vice grip on that, just get a little bit more. There we go. That's a good connection. I'll go ahead and get the right wrench size. Yay! I went ahead and took a marker because the only color the auto parts store had available for these terminals in 8 gauge was red, and it's a little confusing to be putting a red wire on a negative terminal, so just to avoid confusion I went ahead and colored it black. I think I will go, let's see, how do I want to do this? Probably down like that. It's hard to get these started. So let's see, I kind of want to go, you know, that direction, so I'm gonna that should be snug enough. Now we got to run this to the engine, and right here is where that goes. But I've got paint on there. I need to remove a little bit of the paint around that spot. So there's where my ground is going to go. So we will, let's see, run this down along here. I'll end up going through this little holder I got. Might need a bigger one there. I'll end up in there. You know, just snake it on down. Come along here, and I need to cut right about where this thing is. So these are kind of small wire cutters for 8 gauge wire, but I think I can do it. There we go. It took a little work. Again, I took that red terminal and colored it black because it just doesn't seem right to me to be putting a red terminal on a negative ground. So just to avoid any confusion in the future. Yeah, that's why those aren't for 8 gauge. I just bent those cheap cutters. That's going to be a good ground though. Well, aside from my ignition switch, I am all powered up now. Good and snug. Okay, so what is done? Starter relay is done, rectifier is done, alternator is done, regulator is done, turn signal relay is done. That was a simple plug and play. I guess I can either work on the back or work on the front, and kind of want to get the back all cleaned up. So let's attack the back. I know I said earlier I was going to go this way, but I'm changing my mind and want to work on the back now. So one handy thing to have around when you're doing electrical work is just some basic leads with alligator clips on both ends. So let's go black to negative, red to positive. And what I need to do is determine, because I have forgotten which of these colored wires is what on my rear brake. I have to assume that black is ground. So let's make that assumption and hook up our negative ground to that. And then let me make sure the camera can reach. Yeah, I'll change my angle. This is probably a better angle for this. So I bet I should write this stuff down. Let's say red is going to be what, brake? That looks like running. What is white? Oh yeah, red is brake. That's brighter than white, which is running. And then these other two are going to be turn signals. Left is yellow, blue is right. Let me write that down. So rear LED is black ground, red brake. What did I say? White was running. And I gotta go check again, I forgot. White is running, yellow is left, blue is right. Oops. I got two B's, so I need a BL for blue. Okay, now another conundrum, and let's talk about what we have here. For tail light, or what I call running light, we've got brown, black, white, and white. Which one is which? Da, da, da. Which one goes to the brake switch? Front brake is white. And then where's rear brake? Oh, stop lamp switch, rear. That's also white. So the white is for brake. And that also runs up to the headlamp. I think that's making sense to me. So brown is more than likely the tail light. Brown up here, or is brown ground? Well, I know that white
black and white is a common for the front turn signals, and black and white is a common for the rear turn signals, and black and white is a common for the tail and brake lamp. So common, common, common tells me that black and white is our ground and that the brown is our tail light, or what I call running light. And in case I had any doubt, back here on the wiring harness, 3 years ago I put a piece of tape on the black and white wire that says rear turn common. And then here is that rear brake light plug, and that's just 3 simple lines, the white, the brown, and the black and white, which again is a common. And then I have rear turn right and rear turn left. So that's easy. Okay, and then I'll just save this with the other original parts. So, thinking this through, with the small wire coming from the rear LED, black ground will become, or will connect to black and white. Brake will connect to white. White for running or tail will connect to brown. Again, how do I know brown is the running light instead of the white? Because no brown goes to any brake light switches, only the white. Yellow left turn is blue. That's counterintuitive. And B is blue, LG is light green. Okay, blue goes to light green, yellow goes to blue. May want to hang on to this, huh? Sorry, something I said there was confusing. I was referring on the original wiring harness to the blue wire because it was a B. It's not, it's black. BL is blue, so there is no blue on the original wiring harness for any of the rear lights. Just a clarification. So I got the insulation stripped from all of these. Normally, when I splice wires soldering, I use my little mini torch. But again, these are such fine wires, I feel like that mini torch might just melt the wire away. So I'm gonna get a little bit more gentle heat. And as soldering irons go, this is a small one, as small as they get. So low heat. While I'm waiting for my soldering iron to heat, I'm going to put on some of the smallest pieces of heat shrink insulation that I have. I do hope that these are going to shrink enough to get down on those small little wires. Time will tell. The other thing is that LED comes with a long section of wire, much more than I need. I'm going to cut it short, but not too short. I'm going to give myself some slack here. Better too long than too short. When I try to strip wires that are this fine, I just use my teeth. I really don't know another way. And you got to be careful, of course, you're not taking the wire with it. You got to be gentle. These little helping hands are quite handy for things like this, because you need just something to hold your work. It's so fine. Electrical solder, small soldering iron. Put some heat into this thing. Heat the wire first. There we go. That should work. 4 more to go. trying to be careful with how much heat I put to these because of you know, how fine the insulation is on these small wires. I think that's as much as these are going to shrink, but they're holding. And then I had the foresight to put a larger piece, but I don't think it's going to be large enough to slide over the top of all of this, so I may end up just using electrical tape. Okay, so like I thought, I'm not able to get this 1/4 inch heat shrink tube, which is the largest I have, over all of these other pieces, but I was able to at least get them to just overlap just the slightest, and I'm just going to shrink this down, and then I'll just wrap a good quality electrical tape around the whole works, and that should be secure. And then for electrical tape, I really prefer this Tessa brand stuff. It's more of a fabric than a plastic, and it just doesn't get as disgusting and gooey as the cheap plasticky stuff does. Okay, so having a little trouble making my leads reach, but what I do have is negative ground going to the black and white on the harness, so when I power up ignition I can at least do left turn and right turn, but I can't yet test running because I'm not running power to that line on the harness yet. Let me figure this out. How do I tap that in? Okay, so I found, for running lights, I found the brown lead up here on the front still exposed, and what I need to do is get positive to that, and I should be able, yeah, bad connection, but alright, so that's running light. That is wired properly. Now, how do I get brake? That is white. Give me a second. Okay, so I got a test lead that I left the connection between the brown for the running lamp and the positive going. What I need now is to tap into the white for the brake, and I should get brake lights. So that's working. Okay, so the last step I figured out is I have two black and white grounds here that have yet to be grounded to the frame. When I brought negative from the battery to both of these grounds from the harness, then my rear brake light switch begins to work. I have disconnected the tail at this point, so that's why you're not seeing that. But with this, I have tested everything. So we're working. I'm going to call that a wrap for this video, you guys. A little bit more progress on electrical work. Hey, if you like what I'm doing, please give me the thumbs up. And if you want to become an urban monk, please subscribe. Thanks for watching.